Hi and welcome to Keele University. I'm Dave Emley.
And I'm Peter Thomas.
And today we're going to be walking round one of the nature trails that we've laid out at Keele, and they're available to look in this booklet. This is available online to download, or you can get a copy from the reception in the Chancellor's building. And the nature trail itself follows the campus buildings, which take up about half of Keele estate. The estate of the Sneed family covers something like 600 acres, 240 hectares. The campus buildings are half that, about 300 acres, with 300 then being woodland. And there are about 10 or 15 stops to follow, and we'll be following the nature trail laid out in here, and you can either visit us yourselves or follow it online on the Arboretum website. However you come here, we hope you enjoy your visit, and most of the trees that we refer to in our walk are labelled with a label like this. It tells you the name of the tree, the number of the tree identity, plus also the date in which it was planted, where we know. So you can get an idea of how old the tree is and see whether maybe it's something you'd like to plant in your garden, how big it's going to grow.
And as we go around, we'll also tell you something about how the trees grow and how they live.
So however you come here, we hope you enjoy your visit. So we're here at number 1 on our nature trail by a rather magnificent tree. It's probably one of the finest trees we've got on campus, and I think it's an oak tree, is that right?
It is an oak tree, but this is a rather special one. This is our hybrid oak. We've got 2 native species in the country. We've got pedunculate oak and we've got sessile oak, and where they overlap in distribution, they hybridise, and this is the hybrid.
Yeah, is that sort of hybrid bigger? Is it why it's so big, or is it just that it's been allowed to grow?
It's so big because it's been grown in the open. Yeah. If you grow a tree in the open, what you end up with is a tree that is wider than it is tall, because it's cheaper. The tree has to produce lots of leaves, but it's cheaper to go out sideways than it is to go upwards. Because if you go upwards, you've got to start looking at the wind and the effect of the wind.
Yeah. And does this sort of wide growth affect its stability? And should we be worried about it dropping on our head, for instance, if we get a heavy snowfall?
No,
it seems to be quite strong.
Trees are sensible things. What will happen is that as the branches get longer and longer, they actually stop growing. They can detect the weight of the branch, and they stop growing before they get long enough that they actually snap off.
So why is it an oak tree?
Well, if you look at it, you look at the end of the twigs, you can see it's got clusters of buds at the end. There's only 2 trees that have clusters of buds, and that's oak trees and cherry trees. It hasn't got the bark of a cherry tree, that smooth bark with the horizontal stripes on it, so it's going to be an oak tree.
And of course, being an oak, it has acorns.
It does indeed, yeah.
And they're the ones of our native pedunculate oak, the ones which look like an old clay pipe, is that right?
That's
with
right,
a long stalk.
They have a peduncle, a stalk.
And the sessile oak doesn't.
It's sessile, it's stalkless.
Stalkless, yeah.
But the leaves the other way around.
Yeah, I know, it's confusing, isn't it? So we also notice quite a lot of ferns growing out. Is that quite a common thing in trees? You've got some polypody growing out of the cracks in the bark there.
Yeah, where the branches are horizontal, because it's a cracked bark, it accumulates little bits of water, which allows mosses to grow, which accumulates a little bit of soil, and then once you've got a little bit of soil, you can start growing ferns in them. Yeah. So it's all because of the horizontalness of the branches.
So are most of the oaks in this area the pedunculate oak, because we're on nice clay soil?
Yeah.
And the sessile oaks are the ones we notice in Wales on the hillsides.
Yeah, and up in Scotland.
In Scotland,
yeah. That's it, yeah. And here they overlap.
They overlap, which is why we've
lots
got
of hybrids. So, Dave, how do you know this is the beech tree?
This is quite a magnificent beech tree, isn't it? It's got this smooth bark. Although there's all these cracks in it, this is unusual, I'd say, but mainly the bark is smooth. It's got very fine buds, as you can see, and it's a native of mainly southern England, although it does quite well up here. It's a very important tree for seed production, as we'll have a look at in a second, but the leaves on it form quite a dense shade. So in a beech woodland, you'll find there's very little flora on the floor of the wood. But amongst all the leaves that fall down, we've got masses and masses of seed, which Pete's got here.
Little seeds.
Little seeds, and these seeds are vitally important food source for birds like bramblings and chaffinches. And there are beech woodlands on the continent where you get flocks of up to 1 million bramblings wintering, feeding on these seeds. But the production of the seeds not always reliable, is it?
Now you look at these seeds here, the tree tends to produce really good seeds every 2 or 3 years, and it's because when there's lots of seeds, there'll be lots of things that are going to eat them. So lots of mice, lots of birds, etc., eating the seeds. So the tree produces an abundance of seeds every 3 years, and it produces more seeds than the little predators can eat. And then in between time, it produces almost no seeds, which means that the predators end up having nothing to eat and their numbers drop off. And it's a way of actually getting seedlings to grow in those bumper mast years. The real trouble with this tree is that the signal to actually produce the seeds every 3 years is spring temperature. And the trouble is, because of global warming, spring temperatures are getting warmer. So the trees, instead of getting a good signal every 2 to 3 years, they're now getting a good signal every year, which means the trees are now out of synchrony. So in a woodland, instead of all the trees producing lots of seeds in the same year, now they're producing, well, one tree will produce good seed in 1 year, another tree the next year. So there's always seeds in the woodland, so there's always seeds for the predators to eat.
Yeah.
And it's been calculated now that to produce a good seed on these trees takes 40% more energy per seed.
Okay, here we are at point 4, and beneath a tree in flower, which is nice. So this is what? A cherry tree, is it?
This is a cherry tree. This is one of our 2 native species. We've got two native species. There's one up in the north of England that comes down to the Peak District, which is the bird cherry. And we've got this one, which is the wild cherry, which is really the southern species that comes up to this part of the country and a bit beyond. The way to tell them apart is that this cherry actually has flowers that hang in tassels. So when they produce fruits, you end up with the cherries you actually buy in shops. Where if you look at the bird cherry has a central stalk and all the flowers come off it, looking much more like a bunch of grapes. So you can always tell which is which. So bird cherry in the north, wild cherry in the south.
And cherries are distinguished what? By these marks on the trunk?
Yeah, if you look on the tree here, you get these horizontal lines. These are actually breathing holes or lenticels in the bark. Because inside here we've got living tissue, and that tissue has to get oxygen. And the only way to get oxygen through the waterproof bark is to have holes in it, and that's what these little strips are. Underneath this, the corky cells that make the trunk waterproof have actually swelled up a little bit to make air holes to allow oxygen inside. Very distinctive having these horizontal bands on the tree.
And the other thing is that cherry trees, like the oak trees at point number 1 on our trail, have got clusters of buds at the end of the branch, haven't they?
Yeah, the only 2 trees have clusters of buds at the end, the cherry and the oak.
Yes.
And the bark really distinguishes it from an oak.
Well, so that's quite an easy one. We've got that now.
Yeah.
So also we're here at the beginning of what is Cherry Tree Walk, isn't it? And the university set up an Arboretum in 2000, and as part of that Arboretum we decided cherries would be a good focal point for it. And we now have over 240 different species and varieties of cherries, and Cherry Tree Walk is where the first ones were planted in 2001. Right, here we are at a very interesting tree. This is the hornbeam, and significantly it's outside the building called the Hornbeam Building. And so this is the Hornbeam Building is named after the tree. And it's quite interesting history, because when this building was built, Professor Beaver, who was the first professor of geography at Keele, altered the layout of that building so that it didn't interfere with this tree. I think there was another hornbeam here which had to be felled, but he was quite keen that this tree stayed here. And it's one of the most magnificent hornbeams, I think, in certainly in North Staffordshire.
This far north.
This far north. It's a southern tree really, isn't it, Peter?
It is. It's really native to the southeast of England. So up here it's quite a rarity, especially to be this size.
Yeah, and how do we know it's a hornbeam?
And you know, one of the easiest ways, when you look at the tree, it looks like somebody's poured silver paint over the whole tree from the top. As you look up into the canopy, you can see the bark has these silver lines that run down it, just like quicksilver. So it's a very distinctive bark, quite smooth normally, a bit like a beech.
I always think the branches are quite vertical, aren't they? They sort of shoot up like that and like that.
Yeah, that's true.
And,
yeah.
The other thing
what about the leaves?
About the leaves, they're very similar to the beech, aren't they? One of the main things you're going to see at this time of year are the little catkins which are going to start coming down, and they will turn out into what look like Chinese lanterns later in the autumn, and they produce a prodigious amount of seed. But this seed is quite interesting because it's so hard. There's only one bird in this country which can actually crack them open, and that's the hawfinch. So in southern England, hawfinches are not common, but not uncommon in hornbeam woodlands, but we don't get them around here. It's too much. I don't know whether the seed's viable, is it?
Oh yeah, it is, yeah.
It is,
yeah.
so...
Yeah. And another reason why it's called hornbeam is not just the hard seeds, it's also the wood is very hard.
Yeah.
So the wood is like horn, I like bone,
Yeah.
and you make beams out of it and they're very hard. So
think
it's a
they
very dense wood indeed.
Yeah, they used to make the cogs on mill wheels with hornbeam because it was such a hard wood.
Yeah.
But it's not that common in this part of the world, is it?
No, this is a real rarity, especially being this size.
And it's the Chinese lantern seeds in the autumn which help you to pick it out, really, amongst all the other trees because they're so distinctive. Yeah.
Good tree.
Nice tree. So we're outside the geology building here in front of a group of 4 trees, and it's quite interesting this because these trees are dawn redwoods, which are in fact fossil trees in fact, aren't they?
They are. They were first found in 1941 by a school teacher in southwest China, and he found this tree that he had no idea what it was, so he took samples, took them back to his home university and talked to these professors there at botany about what it might be, and they had no idea. And the story goes that a geology professor walked by and he said, "Oh, I know what those are," because he recognised them from the fossil record. So it's thought to be extinct, but a few trees had actually survived over millions and millions of years. Now there have been other fossil trees that have been found since, but this is the one that is reproduced most easily. You can just strike it from cuttings, it grows on any soil you like, so it's the one that's been spread most widely. It's a beautiful tree.
It's a beautiful tree, and in fact it's dotted around the campus, isn't it?
It is.
Normally in 3s and 5s.
It is, it's easy to identify that way.
And we don't really know how tall they're going to grow yet, do
Not
they?
yet,
Because
no.
they were only introduced in 1947, so
But
I mean they're quite magnificent.
in the wild they're growing over 40 metres,
40
and these
metres.
are not even 20 metres yet, so they
There's
could
a
be
long way
twice
to
the
go,
height. Yeah. But it's unusual in the fact that this is actually one of the few deciduous conifers. Yeah, most conifers are evergreen. There's the larch trees and there is the dawn redwood and the swamp cypress. All the others are evergreen, so it's unusual in all sorts of ways.
It has this lovely colour, doesn't it, this time in the spring.
Gorgeous, isn't it? Yeah.
And in the autumn, of course, being deciduous, it's all over the ground, the needles.
And interestingly, it's now starting to produce cones. These must have been produced, 10 years ago first off?
First time, yeah.
Yeah, so they never produced cones in Britain until about 10 years ago, and now they are. And now they're also producing seed. Now, whether the seed's viable or not, it's probably not. But give it a few more years, a bit more global warming, and we could have seedlings growing as well.
So we're at stop number 10 now, and we're by quite an interesting tree. It seems to have a rather corky bark, and it's got a line across the bottom of it. What's all that about, Peter?
Well, this is a Lucum oak, named after William Lucum, who first found this tree in 1763. And it was just after the Turkey oak had been introduced into Britain. And he had the Turkey oak and a cork oak growing side by side in his extra nursery, and one pollinated the other. And the seeds from it he actually got, and it grew into this Lucum oak. So this is a hybrid between the Turkey oak and the cork oak. And it tries to be both. So if you look at the canopy up here, you'll see it's got some leaves on at this time of year. That's because the Turkey oak is deciduous, it loses its leaves in the autumn. So this tree loses some of its leaves in the autumn. But the cork oak, its other parent, is evergreen, so it tries to be evergreen as well. So it keeps some of its leaves right through to this time of year, then it thinks, oh, to heck with this, and it drops the whole lot and grows another lot straight away. So it's trying to be evergreen and deciduous at the same time.
So it's an interesting tree, isn't it? Because it's got this line here and a different sort of bark above and below. What's that all about?
Well, I used to ask students about this, about what they thought had happened, and they came up with all sorts of ideas. That it had a fence around the bottom that's restricted its growth, it's had a disease. But what has actually happened here is that this tree is a grafted tree. So Lucum oak doesn't grow very well on its own roots. So what's happened is that we had a small little seedling Lucum oak, chopped the bottom off, took an English oak at the bottom, chopped the top off that, stuck the two together and literally stuck them together, and they've grafted together. But normally this graft line is done at ground level. But in this case, we reckon that probably the gardener had backache that day, and he couldn't bend down that far, so we chopped the tree off higher up. So we've got an interesting higher graft on it.
The Lucum oak looks as if it's growing faster than the English oak at the bottom. Is it going to grow much further out, or do you think that's...
No, it'll keep on getting worse, because this tree has a higher growth rate than the English oak.
Yeah.
So it makes the tree a bit weaker, because as the wind blows, it's going to put force on the bottom of the tree. And because the tree is narrower, that's where it's going to snap. It's going to snap at all. Fortunately, this tree is protected to the west, where the wind comes from, by other trees. So hopefully it'll be here for a long time.
Yeah. So we could actually, now we're here right next to it, we can go and look at its other parent, the actual Turkey oak, can't we? So here we are again at the same point 10, and we're at a tree which is the parent of the Lucum oak, one of the parents, the Turkey oak. Now that's not native, is it?
No, well, you can guess from the name, it's not native. But it doesn't grow just in Turkey, it goes from Turkey right through until France. So it's really quite a common tree in Europe. Introduced into this country in the 1700s, it's really spread. And it's so much at home here that it's now naturalised, which means that it'll set its own seed and it can invade into woodlands by itself. So in some places like Devon, it's a real weed and a real nuisance. Unfortunately, the wood inside this tree, although there's lots of it, is not actually that strong, so it's not actually that good as a timber tree, unfortunately.
But I mean, like all oaks, of which there's something like 800 different sorts of oak around. Its leaves are similar,
oak-like,
but
surprisingly.
How do we know it's not an English oak then?
Well, if you look at the leaf here, this is one from last year, you'll see that the leaf is actually very long and thin. And often when you look at a Turkey oak, in the middle here, those two lobes are often missing. So you have a sort of straight bit with nothing in the middle. So it looks like a dumbbell. Very distinctive leaf because of that.
Yeah. And one of the things, like all oak trees, I guess it has acorns, but they develop, or they are the parent of one of the pest species which is affecting our native acorns and making them deform to form a gall. I think it's called a knopper gall, is that right?
Knopper gall, yeah. So there's two generations of the insect in the spring. The first generation is on the flowers of this tree, and the second generation is on the flowers of the pedunculate or English oak
tree.
And on that it makes the seed, the acorn, into a sort of a brown little volcano, so it actually destroys the seed. It makes a very nice home for the insect, but destroys the seed.
But is that a problem, do you think, for our oak trees?
It's said that it's going to take something like 5 million acorns to make one mature English oak. And if you take half the acorns away because they're being destroyed by the knopper gall, then that's going to double it to 10 million. Yeah. So we might see fewer oaks in the future.
Well, again, we're still at point number 10 on our nature trail, and we've got to a magnificent tree here. Again, it's not a native tree, is it?
No, this is a sweet chestnut, or sometimes called the Spanish chestnut. So you can see where it comes from. It's a European tree. This tree, we actually know a fair bit about its history because this dates from the first hall at Keele. So the first hall was built in the 1540s, and these trees were probably planted around about 1580. So you can see that they're 500 years old, and you can see just how big they are. Really quite magnificent. This is getting towards about the maximum age of a sweet chestnut. They probably go for about 500 to 600 years. So hopefully it'll be here a fair bit longer.
And this tree is planted all along the terrace here, going down to Keele Hall, isn't it?
Right, this tree is one of a line that actually was on one side of the driveway that led to the original hall.
Yeah.
There was firs trees on one side and sweet chestnuts on the other. Firs have long gone, they're short-lived, so it's only got these things left. So you can actually touch this, and this is an Elizabethan tree.
Yeah,
Isn't that just magic?
Isn't it? It has this distinctive bark, doesn't it, which spirals up and,
It does,
and
yeah.
twists.
Yeah. When you look at most trees, the bark, when they're very young, twists the other way. It twists sort of bottom right to top left. And as it gets older, to about 10 to 15 years old, it then twists the other way, as you can see on this tree. It goes from bottom left to top right. It seems that this is because then whichever way the wind blows, whichever way the wind tries to twist the tree, one part of the tree is actually being tightened up, and it's not going to just fall apart between the tree rings. So it's a way of actually making the tree stronger.
You mentioned that it produces chestnuts, obviously, for the name, and it produces prodigious amount here, but they're not very big?
No, not here. We're a bit too far north.
North.
This wants to be in Spain. It needs those hot summers, hot long summers. There it produces obviously lots of chestnuts which are big enough to eat. Here it's maybe every 3 or 4 years you get chestnuts that you can actually bother with and eat.
Squirrels like them, but
they're not.
So at point 4 on our trail we mentioned the cherry tree walk and our collection of cherries, and we're here in what we call our memorial garden, and it's full of cherries. So what's happening here?
Well, this is part of the national collection. If you look around Britain, there's 3 collections of cherries. This is the only one where we actually grow the trees as proper trees. So the idea is that somebody who wants to buy a cherry tree or wants to plant them in a civic area can actually come here and see what the cherry looks like, see how big it gets, see the shape it grows before they actually buy it. The other advantage of this collection is the naming of them. Cherries have been introduced from lots of different countries, and they end up with lots of different names because some are incomprehensible. Commercially they get given different names, and it's often difficult to know what cherry you're actually looking at. So here we have a collection of cherries which have definitive names on them. So if people think they have a cherry, they can come here and check it against ours to see whether what they've got is what they think they've got.
So we've got about 240 plus varieties and species, which makes it one of the largest collections in Europe, I suppose.
Exactly.
But it's not like back in Japan where they've got masses of the same tree, is it?
No, but we have the advantage that our collection just flowers over a much longer period. If it's all the same variety, you'd have 2 weeks of flowers, and then that's it, finished. Ours goes on for months.
Yeah, so it's been exceptionally early this year, hasn't it?
It has, about 3 weeks early.
3 weeks early, yeah.
Normally they flower from March right through to May, but this year it's earlier.
So here in the memorial garden, you can see it's called that because people adopt a tree in memoriam, might be a loved one
or in celebration.
Or in celebration as well. And also we've got some which are just straight donations. So it's a nice area, but we are getting full and we may have to expand elsewhere, but I think we've got another 18 more to plant, so we're continuing to grow.
Yeah, we planted 14 last year. In fact, we've got some cherries now where there's only 2 specimens in the whole country. We have one of them, so she's really quite nice. And the woodpecker does his stuff.
Yeah, so here we are at the foot of the lawn extending down from Keele Hall, one of the main features of the campus. It's the ancestral home of the Sneed family. It's the 3rd hall to be in existence. And as well as the hall, we've got extensive grounds here. As we can see, as we look round to our side, This is lake number 1 of a series of 5 lakes. There are a further 2 lakes down by the M6 motorway. And this lake was originally 2 lakes. And Sneed decided he'd like one big lake, as you did in those days. And so he dug out the 2 lakes to make this long serpentine shaped lake, and the spoil from these lakes he formed an embankment on the far side which has been planted up with a huge range of trees. Is that right?
Yeah, in the late 1800s, Ralph Sneed planted 100,000 trees on the campus. Lots of oaks, lots of yew trees, but also because he was a landowner, he planted some unusual things that were just coming into the country, so he could show off to his friends.
Yeah.
And that's why when you look across the landscape here, we've got all sorts of interesting pines, the giant sequoia, the cedars, a swamp cypress, all sorts of interesting trees on the landscape which he planted because they were status symbols.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest status symbols at the foot of his lawn are these 2, giant redwoods, are they?
Giant sequoias, yes.
I mean, they look quite big, but I know that they weren't here when I started to work here.
No,
So
they certainly
quite
weren't.
young trees.
If I used to ask students, how old do you reckon those trees are? And you'll see they're a fair old size. They're about 1 metre in diameter. And they used to say, ooh, something like 100 years old, something like that. Well, I used to say, well, actually, I was there when they were planted. I'm not that old. Feel it, but not that old.
But
so these are about 30, 35 years old now. But they grow like the clappers. If you look at most trees, they have rings inside them, annual rings. They're about 2 millimetres wide. So the tree gets 4 millimetres wider per year. Now these trees are producing rings that are 2.5 centimetres wide. So they're getting 5 centimetres wider per year in really good years. They're growing like weeds. And it's partly because they have so much water running past the roots, which they really like.
Yeah.
That's what they have in their natural habitat in California.
Yeah.
And it may well be that, given time, we will have the biggest trees in the world. The biggest tree is a giant sequoia called General Sherman, and it's 11.4 metres wide at the bottom. That's about the width of an average semi-detached house. But eventually, our trees are growing faster. We will have bigger trees in California. But you might have to wait 1,500 years.
Here we are at the foot of Keele Hall lawn, and we're looking at another oak tree, and at first glance you'd be forgiven for thinking it was an oak tree at all. It doesn't look like an oak that we're familiar with the typical sort of fluted leaves of the oak tree. So what's this one, Peter?
This is a Holm oak, H-O-L-M, Holm, Quercus ilex. This is native to northern Spain and into the warmer parts of the Mediterranean. And so because it lives in the Mediterranean, it's an evergreen. In the Mediterranean, because the growing season really is winter and it's so short, there isn't enough time to grow leaves every year. So the leaves have to live for more than 1 year, so they have to be evergreen. But it doesn't look like a typical oak, does it?
No, but it does have this cluster of buds at the end, which
indeed.
all oaks have. So even if you can't tell from the leaf, as long as it's got that cluster of buds, you know it's an oak. And of course, being an oak, it also has acorns as well. It produces acorns, which is rather comforting to know.
The scientific name of this tree is Quercus ilex, and ilex is the Latinized name for holly, because when this tree is very young, the leaves, being evergreen, also have little prickles around the edge, just like a holly leaf.
Just like a holly, yeah.
Because when it's very young, it's prone to being eaten by animals, so it defends itself with holly-like prickles.
Leaves, yeah.
So that's why it's called Quercus ilex.
Wow. And also it's got a very sort of what we call reticulated bark, hasn't it?
Yep.
Cut up into lots of little squares. Well, just opposite this tree, we'll just walk over to this one, because this is quite a common tree in this part of the world. Yet it's a hybrid, isn't it?
Yep, this is the hybrid between 2 native trees. There's the large leaf lime and the small leaf lime, and you put them together and you get the common lime, or sometimes called the European lime. And what's distinctive about it is that at the bottom it nearly always produces this epicormic growth. I mean, this has mostly been chopped off, but if you didn't, you'd just have a great curtain around the bottom here of new shoots.
But it's interesting that the 2 native, its parents, don't have that, do they?
No. If you see a lime tree with lots of shoots at the bottom, you know it's common lime.
And it's planted quite widely, isn't it? Mainly, I suppose, because it's its rapid growth, is it?
Yeah, it's planted more commonly than either of the parents. Both the parents, to set seed, really need very warm summers, as it used to be 5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So now it's the climate's not so good for them, but for the hybrid, it's superb.
It's planted quite widely in urban areas, but in fact, it's probably the wrong tree to do that for, isn't it? Because aphids like to feed on lime leaves, and they produce prodigious amounts of honeydew, which then rains down on your car and everything. Is that right?
And sets like concrete.
Yeah, and also, of course, the honeydew attracts dirt and so on, so the leaves can become quite sooty coloured, can't they?
Yeah, it's actually a mould mostly that does that, a mould that grows on the sugars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a wrong tree for urban areas, but it grows so quickly that's why it's planted. And also you find in this part of Staffordshire quite a lot of farmyard tracks are lined with this lime tree. And in fact, the entrance to the university, the original entrance, was lined by these trees. Okay, here at the bottom of the lawn from Keele Hall on Lake One, one of the features which people always ask me about is this stone you can see in the water there, and it's what's called a glacial erratic. It's a big boulder brought down from sort of Lake District by the glaciers and then left here when they retreated. There's one or two glacial erratic boulders on campus. There's one by the William Smith building, but this one obviously was part of the design by Sneed. He didn't put it there. In fact, it's a bit like a glacier. You're only seeing the top fraction of it. It's quite a big stone, and it was revealed when they dredged the lake about 10 years ago. It's called historically the Otter Stone, and whether otters actually were in Keele and whether otters actually did sit on it, I don't know, but it's quite a common stone for birds to sit on, like the moorhens, but we've also seen small terrapins, which we've got in the lake, sitting on it as well. But behind the otter stone, you can see a conifer there, which has got nice orange bark, and that's one of our native ones, isn't it?
It is. It's our only native pine in the country. It's a Scots pine. We have two other conifers in the country. We have the juniper and the yew tree, but this is the only native pine. Very distinctive by having that orange bark at the top of the tree. There's no other pine that has an orange bark like that.
So in the wild, it's mainly found up in Scotland, isn't it? In the Rothiemurchus forests and places like that. But it's a lovely tree and quite a straight trunk. But it occasionally has a bit of a kink in it, doesn't it, with Scots pines?
Yeah, it's not a very good forestry tree because it always grows with a bend in it somewhere, so it's very difficult to cut planks out of it.
Yeah. Okay, so here we are at the end of our trail today. This is Union Square. Union Square is the heart of the campus, and the square as we see it today was redeveloped in 2012, and as part of its redevelopment we planted a whole series of trees which have a particular purpose. And Pete, what have we got here?
Well, the money for funding these trees was given by Philip Davis, who many years ago was doing his degree here in American Studies, and he met his wife here who was doing Russian. So we have trees on that side of the square which were from America, and ones on this side of the square which are actually from Russia, or at least from that part of the world. We've also got some interesting trees here, like some elm trees, which are resistant to Dutch elm disease. So we're just watching those to see how they go. But it's lovely to have elms back on the landscape. And if you look at the trees around the square here, we have trees that go blue, purple in the winter. We have ones, in the autumn, we have ones that go yellow, ones that go red, and those are the same colours as the university's crest. So it all fits together really quite nicely.
So here we are at the foot of Cherry Tree Walk, and Cherry Tree Walk was named after the cherry trees planted along here, which were some of the first ones we had. as part of the national, what is now the National Collection of Flowering Cherries. We have something like 240 different sorts, and we started planting them in 2001, so the trees along this walkway here date from that date.
But the original cherries on the campus came because in the walled garden behind Keele Hall there was a garden centre, wasn't there?
That's right, yes, and they were closing down and had quite a lot of cherry trees in stock, and they were brought by members of staff and by the university and planted around the ring road.
So we got a job lot.
So we got a job lot, and they then became, we decided to have as part of the Arboretum cherries as a focus, and we were very lucky at the time because Chris Saunders, who was retiring from Bridgemere Nurseries, not far from here, had some cherry trees which he wanted to find a home for, and we offered him our space here. But also we've had valuable donations, some in memory of John Ivinson, who was a student who died, and as part in his memory something like 80 trees were purchased. And Philip Davis.
Philip Davis has given us a lot of money, and he's funded many of the trees we've been planting over the last 10 years or so.
So, you know, coming up here in, say, March and April time, the cherries are getting better and better year on year, and there are species here which are not found elsewhere in the country. And again, there is a leaflet on the Arboretum website for the cherry collection, and you can see here we've got a map showing in pink where all the cherries are to be found. They're dotted around really, which makes this different to other collections in that you have to walk a bit to see them all, but we do have the space luckily in order to do that sort of thing.
And this is the only cherry collection in Britain that's open 24/7 and free of charge.
Free of charge, yeah.
So come and enjoy them.